Spring high tides and strong winds have battered the Western and Eastern Cape provinces. Homes and resorts were flooded as water swept cars away.
Yeah, parts of the province were surprised, by excessive wave heights, and emergency services responded to numerous incidents in Sandy Bay and Mangold's pool resort, this in Gqeberha.
The National Sea Rescue Institute rescued a man caught in a rip current on the Cape Peninsula. He was taken to a hospital and is in a stable condition but suffering hypothermia. In Gqeberha, several people were evacuated when caravans and structures were hit. Meanwhile, Cape Town disaster management teams will assess the damage this morning.
That's right. The city further saying that warnings issued by Weather Service have been limited to the southern parts of the province, but it's further urging residents in the metropole to be cautious and to stay clear of coastal areas.
Well, for more on this story, we are joined by National Sea Rescue Institute spokesperson Craig Lambinon. Craig, good morning. Devastating images we've been seeing. What's the latest on the ground?
Good morning. Thank you very much. So we are appealing to the public to monitor the South African Weather Service's forecasts over the rest of this day. We are currently still in a high tide at the moment. The high tide has started to drop. It'll probably be low tide sort of between 10 and 11 a.m., excuse me, depending where you are around the coast. And then there'll be a high tide again at about sort of between 3 and 5 o'clock this afternoon, also depending where you are around the coast. And that is really the concern at the moment, is that a spring high tide this afternoon, which will now be the second day of the spring high tide. So we are expecting more storm surges with the weather system that's now moving up the coastline, sort of past Plettenberg Bay and east up the east coast. So sadly, we have learned there has been a person deceased related to the storm surges that we experienced yesterday at eNCA's Klip near to Wilderness. A 93-year-old female has sadly passed away after being struck by waves. At eNCA's Klip, the wave heights did reach into the car park. One man was also transported to hospital. NSRI, Wilderness, Frontier Medics, Emergency Services, Police were on the scene there. But there is quite a lot of damage around the coastline. We're learning this morning that the Brass Bell restaurant in Cape Town, in Kalk Bay, has pretty much been severely damaged. And we're noticing as the morning progresses that we're having a lot of erosion, structural damage to coastline structures up the South Cape coast, the Southern Cape, and as we move up towards the Eastern Cape. So our appeal to the public is at the moment, be cautious, stay away, especially during high tide, because the spring high tide is going to be higher than normal. And with the storms that the South African Weather Service are alerting, I believe it's a level 6 alert that they've posted for Plettenberg Bay to Fish River, which will most likely be expected to be updated by source today.
Right.
So those are be cautious.
Yeah. Craig, I mean, also I know you've been urging, residents to also look at tide tables within their areas. How long do you expect this tide to actually last for?
Yeah, so look, there's two high tides and 2 low tides every day of the year. But the spring tide, which peaked on Friday evening, that's going to last. The spring tide effect, that's the new moon spring tide, will last into the new week. So you're probably looking at Tuesday, Wednesday, even maybe Thursday, because of the storms that we've been experiencing, that the Southern Weather Service have alerted us about the storms, are pretty unusual because the storms were from one end of South Africa all the way around the coast to the other end of South Africa. So the whole of the west coast, all the way around up the east coast. And that's something that we don't often see. Although you do get that happening, it's not weather is weather. It's not to say that it's a situation that happens from time to time. But understandably, it is causing some damage and it's affecting people. Our thoughts are with all those people that have been affected. You've seen some of those videos that were on Facebook where cars have been literally swept away, caravans in Gqeberha. swept away by the spring high tide yesterday afternoon on Saturday afternoon. That's affecting people unexpectedly, and our thoughts are with everybody in this difficult time, including condolences to the family who've lost their 93-year-old loved one in which appears to be, we are still gathering more information about that incident. It appears to be related to this weather front that we have experienced over the last 24 hours, and it may also have an effect into the rest of today and maybe even into the new week.
Now, Craig, even when we warn people, for some reason, Tumelo, people still want to go and see what is happening. I even saw a video of people running ahead of waves. And then, if I understand correctly, the George municipality has closed some of its beaches. Can we expect that more beaches will be closed?
Yeah, so look, that's why we appeal to the public. So it's the municipalities are responsible, and we know George municipality have closed beaches all along that stretch of coastline. There's been a lot of erosion, a lot of structural damage along the coastline. It's affected, and that's probably going to stretch upwards up the east coast. Like we said, a level 6 warning alert that the Southern Weather Service have put for Plettenberg Bay to Fish River. So it's kind of, now's the time not to put yourself in unnecessary danger, rather batten down the hatches, stay safe. We are noticing as the weather starts to clear, parts of the west coast now are starting to see better weather already, but we've still got a spring tide this afternoon between sort of 3 and 5 o'clock, depending where around the coast you live. It's a spring high tide. Be cautious. Don't put yourself in danger unnecessarily.
Well, Craig, we'll leave it there, and absolutely that caution coming there quite expressively, rightfully so, because we've seen the extent of the damage that this tide could actually do, and also still investigations ongoing regarding, the unfortunate passing of the elderly individual, whether or not it's been ascertained that it could be related to this tide. But you can see some of the visuals there as well, Jenny Lee, of the extent of the damage. You see these cars being swept away at this time. Craig Lambinon joining us saying that please take extra caution. Do not try and, take chances here. It might be a bit too risky.
Absolutely. We'll continue watching that story for you as it is developing. Hopefully there will be no further fatalities or injuries. Stay away. Don't try and go and take a video for the socials. We've got you covered. We'll bring you those images right here on eNCA.